ladies and gentlemen, we have none other than the Honorable Judge Joe Brown on the line. Good evening, Judge.
Good evening. How are you?
You had me sweating over here. Listening, I was going, Lord Jesus, what they do to the judge? How are you?
It's a connectivity problem we have in the area. I mean, I'm not even getting one bar on the iPhone, so it's difficult.
Okay.
It's difficult, but I finally got through.
Well, listen, I'm so happy because I was listening. You don't know. I'm talking about those big sweat pellets coming off my head going, Lord have mercy. The judge is supposed to be here. Well, now that you're here, just tell them who is Joseph Brown, also known to the world as Judge Joe Brown, and why you're choosing to run to be the next mayor of Memphis.
Well, the Judge Joe Brown, because after I got elected to my second 8-year term, I got a certificate from the governor that said hereinafter and forevermore, you're entitled to use the title of judge as an honorific. Next thing is when I got that show, I tried to register for my performing name as Joseph Brown, Joe Brown. They said no, so I said Judge Joe Brown, and that was approved with SAG-AFTRA. And then I incorporated as Judge Joe Brown. So, yeah, that's me. Now, that's what that's about. Next thing, me, I've been around. I grew up in Los Angeles, California, born in Washington, D.C., moved to Memphis a half-century ago, made it home, done a lot of things, been a school teacher, college professor, adjunct law professor, run playgrounds, been a scoutmaster, all kinds of things, dug ditches, did construction, member of several unions, criminal defense lawyer, first black prosecutor of the city of Memphis, ran the public defender's office back in the 70s. Poverty law, worked for Equal Employment Opportunity Commission, got the youngest person in the world on death row, off death row on an appeal and a stay of execution. Last judge on the James Earl Ray Martin Luther King thing when I was a criminal court judge, had some note on sentencing reform and rehabilitation. And I did this number 2 rated daytime syndicated show for 15 years. So it is what it is.
Wow. You know, Judge, when I was growing up, and guys, y'all, I'm dating myself when I say this. Back in the day, there was a TV series called The $6 Million Man. Steve Austin starred in it.
Yeah.
And you remember that show. That said,
I didn't watch it much.
I didn't
watch much TV. I read a lot.
Well, I'm going somewhere with this. Steve Austin was called the $6 Million Man. You were the $28 million man in Hollywood when your show was on. That said, you made a whole lot of money. So tell somebody why you would choose to run for mayor. It couldn't be for the money. So why are you choosing to do
not for the money. I don't need the money. I've never done things for money. I mean, I just don't appreciate it. It's always about sense of purpose, duty, honor, obligation, responsibility, and accountability. I've always been about the business of protecting womanhood and promoting manhood and trying to make where I live a better, safer, more secure place filled with economic prosperity, sense of purpose, morality, and ethics. I've tried to encourage myself and others to be men, I guess, or women of public peace, dignity, and order who can be brave and courageous when necessary.
Wow.
So that's what I've done.
Because, you have something, or you're known for the term man up. Is a lot of the problems in Memphis because they need more men to man up?
Oh, definitely. That's a problem with the whole country. Is it's been emasculated, and there is a drastic need to man up. See, masculinity and manhood the categories in which those who are the security force for humankind find themselves. You do not ask in a masculine fashion for reward. You do it because it's what you're supposed to do as a man. And one of our problems as a people is we have too little manhood in the hood. One of the problems that is developing in the country is we have too little manhood. We have online bullying where somebody got bullied. We have verbal assaults and all of this kind of stupidity, hate crimes, and all sorts of insanity. It doesn't make any difference if you murder somebody because you hate them, just because you hate them, or you hate them because of what they are. They're still dead. That says that you are making a judgment call on the innate worth of someone, which is not appropriate. We don't deal with some people having more intrinsic value than others, though I think the Washingtonian administration thinks because they are privileged to have the advantage of certain security things that nobody else has, they're better than the rest of us, which is not the case. And we have gotten completely out of it. We are not in the manhood, and we need to put it back in the hood. When you don't have a respect for half the human race, you have hell. If you are a womanhood hater, you're a damn fool, and if you are a man hater, you're a damn fool. So let's just put it that way. This is what I do. Not because I get paid, but because it's the thing to do.
I agree. Judge, I looked at the people running for mayor. I mentioned it a moment ago. Like 13 people. You got a state representative, a sheriff, a former mayor, and you also have someone who's running the NAACP there. So oh God, y'all, my judge dropped off the line. Wow. Y'all listen, my prayer warriors, y'all gonna have to pray for this show. The devil is just busy. He told us earlier he was having a connectivity problem. So let's pray that the judge gets back on. There we go. You're back on.
Now, as you were saying about the 13, 14, 15 candidates in Memphis, go ahead. That's where I kind of lost everything.
Right. So you got a sheriff, you got a state representative, you got a former mayor, and you also have the person who's heading up the NAACP there. So you got a lot of mixed people or mixed group of people there. That said, tell the people why Judge Joe Brown is a cut above all that he's running against.
I don't have any ethical compromises. The sheriff has suffered 5 folks dead in the same office building where he has his offices without explanation and his department's out of control. He will sometimes go down in the hood, but usually with an armed escort of uniformed deputies and doesn't shake hands or talk to the people. We have one person who's head of the NAACP who typically stretches ethics to the max, not stresses, but stretches ethical considerations to the limit. He's a sellout. He's trying to get a lot of money, personal gain through his various positions. And let's see, we've got somebody that claims the most important thing for Memphis is to improve the downtown skyline, and he's already got 3.7% of what is $250 million that the entity is promised to put up for minority development. We've got the state representative who has received $370,000 in 8 years from various entities that you can put in the never, never, never should you even come near list when, let's say, the late Miss Barbara Cooper, who held a similar position for 30 years, received less than $1,500. You have somebody on the Board of Education who now is being caught up in a scandal about corruption on the board, which is something I've been talking about. We've got another somebody who is running game on the public. He's transgender, I think, something like that. He claims, or it claims, or whatever it is. And then we have another somebody who, white, he is deep into real estate development. It's a vested interest of his to get zoning variances so he can continue to make his fortune at taxpayer expense. The rest of them are essentially nobodies that nobody has ever heard of. The previous mayor, it was one of the better mayors we've had, but he's not what we need for right now. And some of the things that he set up years ago are directly contributory to some of our worst problems.
Wow.
So that is what it is. I even was on some of the defense teams that represented him years ago. And frankly, when he ran the first time and got elected in 91, it was me and another state judge that saved him from getting defrauded out of the position by election cheating. So it is what it is. But I'm the only one that can go down and interface with all of the people in all parts of the city. And I've challenged everybody to go where I go without an armed escort and see if they survive and come back. And surprisingly, when I get someplace, the people want to be my security, which I kind of like that. Now, that's what we need, somebody that can be up close and personal with everybody. To give you an example of what that means, I've been approached by various crime factions in the city, gang members and stuff, gangs, and asked to see if I can't broker a peace, which I did down in the Bahamas about 15 years ago, duplicate it so the killing will stop, crime will drop, and we can turn the people who might be unproductive and bad for the community into productive young people who have a sense of purpose and some cause to be. Now,
so, if I remember correctly, Memphis has some over 100 gangs in the city, doesn't it?
We've got a bad problem here, but depending upon how you count it per capita or absolute numbers or percentages, we may in fact be the murder capital of the United States, which is not a good thing. That's not good. We are also the hijacking capital of America, the car theft capital of America, definitely the rape capital of America, and we've got 28,000 or 12,000, depending upon how you construe statute of limitations, untested rape kits that languish, and a lot of women do not get justice as a result, and a lot of other women are endangered as a consequence.
You know what, Judge? I watched the situation with Eliza Fletcher, the young billionaire's granddaughter that went missing, and the city, spared no expense looking for her and looking for who they said killed her. That said, does Memphis apply that same type of, force or diligence when other people who aren't billionaires' granddaughters go missing, or if there's a crime that needs to be solved?
No, it doesn't. No, it doesn't, but that's not racism. I'll tell you why in a second. If they had tested the rape kits, they would have found that the suspect was implicated in raping a black woman from some months before, and her assailant could have been brought to justice, and this white woman would have been spared. Less than 24 hours before this woman was kidnapped, raped, and tortured, and then murdered, I had at a function that the young Democrats had mentioned that there was a high danger of women being raped in the city, and it was a man's job to protect them from such things. They got violently upset, or at least they threw a real hissy fit about it. How dare he say we need protection, and then less than 24 hours later this happened. The same one that allegedly raped and murdered this woman after torturing her also raped after kidnapping a black woman, and he had just gotten out of the penitentiary from kidnapping a white attorney that I was personally acquainted with. I can understand how that happened from 25 years before and had done time. So there is discordant disconnect between reality and what one's wish list is about, or what one's fantasy or ideology or agenda is about. We have to deal with real. There is that problem. And also they caught the guy because, like typical stupid, stuck-on foolishness types, he committed the crime wearing some of these slide sandals, so they got DNA out of the sandals, which they already had, but nobody did what they were supposed to protect the women around here. We just had one 67-year-old got robbed in an ATM. It went kind of viral because they recorded it. He had on slides, and then it turns out that when they caught him, he had already been wanted for car theft, multiple armed robberies, assaults, and such like. And why is that a problem in light of our police department? Is it racism? Well, try this one. This is the largest predominantly black city in the United States. Depending upon how you count it, it's the 14th largest city in the country. All right? The overwhelming majority of the police, 65+% are black. The chief of police is a black female. The sheriff is a black male. 60% of the criminal court judges are black and female. 65 to 70% of the prospective jurors are black, and a bit more than 65% of the cops are black. So where does the racism come in?
Okay, so it's not racism. Okay. But I'm just trying to,
we have
in terms of the way that,
and this is where the problem comes in. It's not racism. It's we have no black leadership, and what tries to pass itself off as the leadership lacks it. They have no command authority. They have no charisma. They have no presence. They couldn't get a person suffering from diarrhea to follow them to an outhouse where there's a plentiful supply of toilet paper.
See, I told people, when I was preparing for this show, I said, the reason I think Judge Brown should be the next mayor is if you take him and you put him in the church, he can stand flat-footed in the pulpit and say whatever he needs to say. If you put him in the hood, he can talk to that crowd. If you put him in the political circle, he can talk to that crowd. Or if you put him in a boardroom, he can talk to that crowd. So no matter which way they stretch you, you got him. And so I don't think some of the people, and I won't call any names, that are running had that ability to be able to move around the city wherever they may need to fix this problem that exists in Memphis and be able to communicate effectively with whatever group they have to.
Well, how can you be a leader when you don't even have good conscience and your ethics are lacking because you hold yourself out as leading the people, but your main motivation is self-enrichment at the people's expense? See, those things are inconsistent. They're discordant. It's a disconnect. So you listen to somebody saying, elect me, it's like, what are you going to do? Well, you don't have any programs except spending the tax dollars in a fashion that will benefit a very, very few people. where the middle class is neglected. Small businessmen and women are totally neglected. Nobody wants to prop up the entertainment industry we have and make it bigger. Nobody wants to exploit the Mississippi River for hydroelectric power in ways that are available in modern times, which don't require dams and concrete emplacements, don't have a slight clue about utilizing Memphis's nature as a distribution point for this continent to encourage and bring in barge trafficking, import and export, the relocation of Ford and Cadillac when it comes to manufacturing electric automotive units and turning it into the Detroit for the 21st century. They don't have a clue. Using the energy that can be cheaply generated to bring in huge industrial facilities that could make this, again, one of the largest cities in America, if not the largest, by the time the 21st century merges into the 22nd. They have no vision. It's just how much money can I make for myself and how can I get away with it. Memphis, unfortunately, is probably the most corrupt medium to large size city in America. It's endemic and it's traditional and it's expected. If you look at the income for the city, it's in billions of dollars, and the output, the expenditures are billions, but they don't go for the benefit of the people.
Right.
At all. I know where the skeletons are in the closets. Hell, I know where the graveyards are.
I believe that. Because, Memphis should be a thriving city. For anybody who does not know the location of Memphis, Memphis sits literally in the center of the country. It should be, the hub for everything moving in the country. Why is that not happening right now?
It is, but the local yokels don't know how to make anything off of it for the people. They just try to get crumbs, and the big operators tell them to go to hell, and nobody winds up getting anything. See, if you go to our airport, it doesn't look impressive, but it leads the entire world in shipped commercial tonnage. FedEx is located here, UPS is located here, the bulk mail center is located here. Everybody that's about transport in and out is located here, and everything shipped into or out of America essentially moves through Memphis. It's where the main highway in the country, I-40, crosses the main river, the Mississippi. It's always been that, and it is what it is. So people here just don't know how to deal with it because they can't think that well, and they're penny-ante little petty crooks who like to steal money out of petty cash funds, and they're always setting up some committee that puts money into a pot that they can steal from, and you can see it. It's pretty clear when you do an audit on something. And I can remember 27 years ago when I was running the grand jury as the supervising judge, I had them go over the books and accounts of various state, county, and municipal agencies in the district, and there was just widespread theft and thievery.
Wow.
Widespread.
Really?
And we had a juvenile court here where the judge from 1963 to 2006 only had a fifth grade education, so he was not permitted to hear cases. So what happened is he hired all of these referees and magistrates that weren't legally appointed as per the state and local rules, but he had them, and he turned it into a private profit-making corporate entity that was not interested in resolving problems or promoting effective childhood, so you produced effective adults. Their business was making a problem worse to generate income. We've got a new juvenile court judge, Atari Sugarman, who is the part-time public defender in my courtroom for about 10 years. Mm-hmm. He should straighten things out. I'm sure he will.
Really? Because, I guess I was somewhat surprised, but I guess not. I guess I'd never really thought about the numbers. But it said that the murder rate in Memphis is very high right now. Basically, there were 346 homicides in 2001 and 302 total homicides in 2022. How can you turn that around?
Easy enough. I did it was on the criminal bench. It's a matter of hands-on leadership. You have to act as a village chieftain, and you have to give the youth cause and purpose so they don't find themselves self-destructive and suicidal. And when you're suicidal, there is an alternative to putting a pistol to your own head. It's called suicide by cop or suicide by neighbor or suicide by drug. And that last one, people want to give all kinds of denials, but I'm sorry, for a long time, I had a team of psychiatrists, clinical psychologists, and physicians, and everybody I sentenced or considered for probation had to go through and be analyzed, and the results were very interesting. And it gave a clue as to what to do to rehabilitate them. Another thing is, depending upon the criminal justice system, is kind of a bad thing because it's no longer about controlling crime, it's controlling surplus labor. They do not want in this system your free labor. Some people are worried about the 13th Amendment being used to enslave folk. That's not why they lock you up. They have you do work things, make work stuff, and what that was about is, or what that is about, is idle minds mischief make. And you want people to have something to do so they don't cause too much trouble. The other thing is that the penitentiary system, the jail system, schoolhouse, the jailhouse pipeline is about there are too few jobs paying too little of what the typical American expects to be paid to satisfy the requirements of the labor market. So that's a glut in labor, and the labor is a commodity. And there are three things you do when you have a commodity glut. You cut back production, subsidize the would-be producer, store the surplus. We put the surplus in a jail cell instead of a grain silo. The subsidy is the public assistance check. Cutting back production is causing the youth to get stuck on stupid, to have inappropriate lifestyles, way of carrying themselves, getting knocked up too early, too often, failing to acquire vocational skills and academic proficiencies, having the wrong way of looking at things, and generally acting in a lawless fashion, a careless fashion, a rude fashion that generates hostility and a lot of killings that are unnecessary. And instead of being able to use the political process as a tool for collective self-help, it becomes dysfunctional. The effort is wasted. So that's one of the problems that we have when it comes to our community, is we put ourselves right in the midst of being ideal denizens for being warehoused as surplus labor. So they're not rehabbing people, because if you rehab folk, you just make them part of the problem. Again, it's not making money off of their labor. It's having things to do so they don't cause trouble. And when you get out, you are pretty much in a bag where it's difficult to find a job or ways to sustain yourself. So there you go. I know how to turn that around.
Well, tell us, we're listening, because somebody needs to. Memphis is in trouble. How would you try?
The whole country is in trouble. The 21st century will be dependent upon STEM, science, technology, engineering, math, things that deal with administrative capacity and management, and yet we are pricing the education that's necessary to deal with those things out of the reach for people realistically. So if you get the education, there's not much of a chance that you will have a job in it, and then you will be in hock for another decade or so trying to pay things off.
But see, Judge, I found in my research that 80% of the failing schools in Tennessee are in Memphis. So if your children get, I said what?
That's right.
Okay, so if 80% of the
one of the things I'm thinking about doing is sticking the city attorney's office on the county board of education and suing them for fraud, since the citizens of Memphis are the largest contributors to the finances of the county board of education, and they have a compact to deliver good education to the children, and they're failing. They have managed to fire most of the best teachers who were getting paid $80,000, $90,000 a year with master's degrees, PhDs, and years of experience, and replace them with people with a 2-year college education starting at $28,000 to $32,000 a year with no benefits. That's not what we need teaching the children. And they no longer have to learn cursive writing. They are not required to memorize their multiplication tables because supposedly you can use cell phones, but what happens if you run out of battery? And or, as is typical for Memphis Light, Gas, and Water, they've got a 6, 7, 9, 10, 16-day breakdown where they can't produce electricity.
Wow.
What do you do about that? So it's all a condition of going to hell very rapidly in a handbasket.